Welcome to the Awareness Magazine show. On this edition, our guest is Maureen St. Germain, who's been a guest previously, and this is kind of part two of our first interview on the Akashic Records and your new book, Meet Your Record Keepers and Discover Your Soul's Purpose. Maureen is known as the practical mystic who supports individuals in their personal and spiritual growth. She is a teacher who is taught around the globe and a book author. So she's here to talk about her new book that I just mentioned and to give us some information, more information on the Akashic Records. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
It's fun. It's very fun to interview, so thank you.
My pleasure.
So please tell us again about the Akashic Records.
Well, before I begin, I want to tell you that some of your audience may think to themselves, oh, well, she's done this special work and she was born with this. But I'm like everyone else. I was a mom. I worked in the corporate world, and I had two jobs, running my home and working in this corporate job. And this was my passion. This was my interest. Mm-hmm. So anything spiritual I wanted to learn about. And what I didn't realize when I started out is that I would actually grow my own skills and my own gifts to a much bigger level. That was more like an outcome. Kind of like when you think about the gym, you go initially because maybe you want to lose weight, but you discover you get stronger. Your muscles are more, flexible. And so that's what happened to me. I discovered, not only did I learn stuff, but now I had access and could do things. So the Akashic Records is this body of knowledge that you might think of like the internet. Mm-hmm. And it contains all the information about what we've done in past lives, and what we're contemplating for the future. So our probable and possible futures are also available as options in the records.
Okay. And how do you train people?
Well, I think I was a born teacher. I love to teach people, and it's one of my favorite things to do. And so what I do is I teach by example. Okay. There's a very specific way we go into the records with a prayer. It's an invocation. And this is common no matter whose system you use, whether my system or some other teacher's system. We all access the records by petitioning, if you will. Now, the reason for the prayer isn't so that you follow some set of rules, mm-hmm. but it's a way to kind of step into the matrix of being prepared for the receiving of that information. Because there was a dispensation that was granted to humanity to have access. And we're not actually going inside that soup of the information. We're going to the threshold. So it's a bit like the reference librarians that you go and borrow a book, but they're watching you the whole time. And you don't get to take that book home. You have to look at that information and then hand it back to them. So mm-hmm. the beings that are in this, I'll call it the soup of the Akashic Records, are actually coming to that threshold and meeting us there. And usually what happens to start with is we get information before the client asks any question. So one of the things I do when I teach is I teach my students to receive that information right away so that it allows them to get into that connection very quickly. I also help them with defining ways to know for sure that they're in the records.
And in regards to historical evidence with the Akashic Records, will you please explain that to our viewers?
Well, the most recent historical example is a well-known psychic mystic named Edgar Cayce,
yes,
who lived in the 30s, and he would go into a trance. And he was somebody who was, I would call, a reluctant mystic at first, because all of this came to him and he found himself in a situation where he had no choice. So people asked him, where are you getting this information? And he said primarily two places. First, he was getting information from the person's own field or energy mm-hmm. around them. And then he was also getting information from their Akashic records. Now, later when he defined the Akashic records, while he was in a trance, he said it was the same as the Book of Life. So now you go back to the Old Testament, and the Old Testament refers to the Book of Life many, many times, and references that, in the idea of God keeping score or awareness of your actions is in the records. It's in this book of life. And really, up until the last century, it was referred to as the book of life.
Okay. And then what came about with the name change from the Book of Life to...
Well, because Edgar Cayce started using the word Akashic records, and then also there were other mystics, Madame Blavatsky and so on, who referred to this energy as the Akashic records. It became a more commonly used name. Now, the word Akash in Sanskrit means sky. So, you know, if you try to literally translate it, you get, well, it's up in the sky somewhere, but it's way more than that. The word Akash is not the records. That's why it's like the records in the sky, so to speak.
Okay. And let's see. The next question I have is you talk about incarnation. Why do we choose to incarnate?
Yeah, this is very interesting
important.
because in the records, through thousands of sessions that I have had privilege of being the guide, I have discovered that there's three primary reasons that people incarnate. One is to like hop on the train, no matter where it's going, no matter where it's landing, because it'll put them in consciousness at a time and place that they want to be. So it's going where they want to go. And to put a play on words, it could be a cattle car, it could be a freight train, or it could be a passenger train, but they're getting on it because they want that in.
Okay.
That's why sometimes people come into very difficult situations and then they become an adult and they completely transform their lives. Then the second reason is they want to step in and do something very specific, like in a family. Maybe they want to accomplish something very specific in a family. And then the third reason has to do with a specific location or time and place where you have chosen to be involved in a certain situation. And that involves certain kinds of contracts and that sort of thing. And finally, throughout it all, people tend to incarnate in families. And one of the things that has come through many, many times is that someone in the family who died young comes back as the next baby. And I've seen this over and over. So you maybe give birth to a stillbirth, or maybe someone dies in a car crash, and then the next young baby that comes in from the same kind of family group is that soul reincarnated. And there's even a famous case of the Pollock twins in India, where the two siblings were killed in a car crash. Someone hit them as they were crossing the street, and the father, who believed in reincarnation, even though he was a devout Catholic, kept asking in his prayer work for these girls to come back. And when his wife got pregnant a few months later, he told her that they would have twins and they would be their two daughters. When the two daughters were old enough to talk, they were talking about some of the things that had happened to them in their previous lifetime. They identified the toys. When the toys were pulled out, you know, that had been put away, oh yeah, that's my doll Susie, like that. It was quite amazing, very well documented.
Very interesting. And speaking about incarnating in families, can you change families? Can you go with different souls? Because, you know, a lot of people, they don't want to be stuck in their current family. They want something different. They want more highly evolved families if they've evolved and their family hasn't. So how does that work?
Well, remember that some of those people chose those families to kind of fulfill some kind of agreement that they wanted to fulfill, and then they're you know, they can become free agents and do what they want. On the other side of it, I know of a case of a family where they were all highly evolved except for one member of the family, and when one of the siblings asked about this errant family member, the record keeper said, well, he wanted to incarnate in a family of highly evolved souls because he wanted to evolve quickly. Okay. Of course, his siblings are looking around going, well,
hurry up. That's funny. And also, please explain, there is the Goddess of Liberty. I have not heard of the Goddess of Liberty, so I assume some people have also not.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very interesting concept. The Goddess of Liberty is well known as the Statue of Liberty.
Okay.
So when that statue was crafted, the artist was inspired by the Goddess of Liberty to create the statue and create this opportunity for people to recognize. But she's also known as Ceres and other titles throughout antiquity. And she stands for the ability to have personal responsibility. We think of freedom, being free to do what we want, but that always implies responsibility.
Yes, it does.
And the Goddess of Liberty not only gives us that sense of authenticity, but also helps us self-identify that we are holy beings, that we have a soul, that we have the ability to achieve great things. And that energy of empowerment is being held for everyone. So she is the spokesperson of the Great Karmic Board, and she also oversees this work in the Akashic Records. And I find that her presence allows us to be a little more authentic and a little bit, I'll call it juicier, because sometimes we have to deliver information we don't want to deliver.
Yeah. When I first heard about the Goddess of Liberty, before I asked you, I thought, I wonder if that has something to do with the Statue of Liberty, and it was right there.
But she's on many state capitals. You know, like I know for a fact that the statue on the top of many state capitals, including Madison, Wisconsin, is a statue of the Goddess of Liberty.
Okay.
Looks like the same goddess.
Well, thank you so much, Maureen, for being a guest again. It's always a pleasure, and so great to talk to you. And thank you for your wonderful spiritual work and helping humanity. So,
and thank you for having me. It's always a delight.
Thank you, Maureen. Have a wonderful time here, and
Thank you.
Enjoy your stay. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.